When Shen Yuan came home from working overtime on the weekend and went to the bathroom, she noticed a used tissue in the trash can. This wasn't unusual, considering Gao Qingyun hadn't gone out all day, not even for lunch, which he had ordered in. However, Shen Yuan, being observant, noticed that the tissue was folded differently from how she and Gao Qingyun usually folded it. Plus, men don't typically use tissue when they urinate. She calmly walked out of the bathroom. Gao Qingyun's eyes were still glued to his computer screen, and he called out loudly when he heard her, "Honey, what should we have for dinner?" Shen Yuan casually asked, "Did anyone come over to use the bathroom? The lipstick I left on the sink is missing." Gao Qingyun, with his back to her, responded without a hint of suspicion, "No, maybe you left it somewhere else." Shen Yuan walked into the bedroom. The bed was as neat as usual, with the same sheets and covers she had left that morning. But she was certain now, Gao Qingyun had cheated on her. They had been together for 2 years before getting married, and now they had been married for 4 years. She thought Gao Qingyun would never betray her, but he had. Her nose tingled, and her eyes felt swollen. She noticed her lipstick on the bedside table, picked it up, and twisted off the cap, drawing a long line across the bed sheet. She took the sheets and covers to the balcony to wash them. Gao Qingyun asked, surprised, "Weren't you looking for your lipstick? Why are you suddenly washing the sheets?" "I found it. It was on the bedside table, but I accidentally smudged it on the bed." Gao Qingyun responded with an, "Oh," and went back to his game. Shen Yuan shoved the sheets and covers into the washing machine with force, as if doing so could ease the pain in her heart. This washing machine had a drying function, too. Gao Qingyun had spent twice the money on it because Shen Yuan didn't like how clothes hanging on the balcony ruined the aesthetic during rainy days. When they bought it, Shen Yuan's parents had even scolded him for spending too much. He had clearly doted on her so much, so why could he now turn around and sweet-talk another woman? Shen Yuan hired a private detective to investigate Gao Qingyun. A week later, she saw the photos in the detective's hands. In the photos, Gao Qingyun was out shopping with a long-haired woman, their postures intimate and suggestive. The woman was around Shen Yuan's age, not particularly more beautiful, perhaps even a bit gaudy. But her belly was swollen, clearly 7 or 8 months pregnant. Shen Yuan laughed, a sound as piercing as a night owl's screech. She laughed uncontrollably, to the point where tears flowed down her face. She finally understood why Gao Qingyun had cheated on her, because she, Shen Yuan, was infertile. Shen Yuan's infertility was discovered in the 2nd year of their marriage, when her parents pressured them into getting checked because she hadn't gotten pregnant. When the results came out, Shen Yuan remained calm and told Gao Qingyun, "If you resent me for this, I'm willing to divorce." At that time, Gao Qingyun was content with their life together, not eager to have children. Moreover, with his parents already passed away, there was no pressure from in-laws. It was Shen Yuan's parents who felt guilty toward Gao Qingyun. They had previously disapproved of his laziness and lack of ambition, but after the diagnosis, they treated him like their own son. So when did he start wanting a child? Shen Yuan had no idea. She had even suggested adopting a child to him earlier. He said, "I can't stand kids. They'll just compete with me for your attention." No way. But what he really wanted was his own child. That evening, when Gao Qingyun returned from work, Shen Yuan was already home. She wasn't cooking dinner but was sitting on the sofa with a serious expression, waiting for him. This made him nervous. No, he had been so discreet. She couldn't possibly have found out. Even though he was sure of this, he still felt uneasy. He sat next to her and asked with a grin, "What's with the big setup? What's going on?" Shen Yuan spoke slowly. "There's something I've been hiding from you for a long time. I originally intended to keep it from you forever, but there's been a recent development, so I think you should know." Gao Qingyun was puzzled. "What is it?" "Honey, remember when we had that checkup and the doctor said my uterus was too cold to conceive? I actually lied to you. I'm perfectly healthy. The reason we can't have a baby is because of you. The doctor said your sperm has low motility. I was afraid you'd be upset and worried my parents might pressure us into divorcing, so I lied to you." But recently, a doctor from the US who specializes in male infertility has come to Hong Kong. I want to take you there to see him. Honey, why do you look so pale? Don't worry, even if it can't be cured, I'll always be by your side. Besides, with today's technology, we can always try IVF. Gao Qingyun's face was a mess of emotions, his complexion shifting from pale to green to black, like a painter's palette. For a moment, he suspected that Xin Yuan had discovered everything and was saying all this to provoke him. But her expression remained calm, filled with concern and anxiety, revealing nothing. Could what she said be true? Gao Qingyun stood up. I'm really confused right now. I need to go out for a walk, to clear my head. Xin Yuan's concern was evident. All right, but come back soon. Gao Qingyun didn't trust Xin Yuan easily. As soon as he left, he went straight to the hospital. The next day, when the test results came back, he was struck like lightning. Everything Xin Yuan had said was true. Then the child in Su Qing's belly. Gao Qingyun's eyes turned cold in an instant. Gao Qingyun almost lost his mind as he rushed to Su Qing's place. Since Su Qing became pregnant, Gao Qingyun had been catering to her every whim, treating her like a fragile treasure. Whatever she wanted, he bought for her. Even when she threw random tantrums, he couldn't bring himself to say a harsh word. Why? Because he believed the child she was carrying was his. No, she made him think it was his. At first, he wasn't interested in having a child. Xin Yuan was beautiful, capable, and proficient in everything. She took care of him meticulously every day. Her salary was more than double his, and she covered most of the household expenses. His wages were just enough for his personal indulgences and occasionally buying gifts for Xin Yuan. He couldn't live without her. But at some point, the number of people in his social circle posting about their children increased. Those small, soft, smiling faces looked like angels, touching the softest part of his heart. Gradually, when he was on the street or at the mall, he found himself drawn to those little kids. It was then that he started longing for a child. Ideally, it would be a child he had with Xin Yuan, but unfortunately, Xin Yuan was infertile. He had considered IVF, but after consulting with a doctor, he found out that Xin Yuan's condition wasn't suitable for it. He met Su Qing in a bar, just a one-night stand. If she hadn't called later to say she was pregnant and needed money for an abortion, he probably wouldn't have contacted her again. Su Qing was lounging on the sofa, reading a fashion magazine. When she saw him storm in, she simply raised an eyebrow in surprise. What's wrong? Did that hen at home, who can't lay eggs, upset you again? Gao Qingyun glared at her with a face dark as thunder. Su Qing felt a bit scared and finally stood up, holding her waist as she approached him, pouting. What's wrong with you? You're scaring our baby. Gao Qingyun's eyes fell on her protruding belly. Su Qing continued, Our son kicked me again today. He's been very active lately. I'm sure he'll be a lively boy when he's born. Unable to hold back any longer, Gao Qingyun slapped her hard across the face. Su Qing lost her balance and fell to the floor, her stomach seizing in pain. Her eyebrows shot up in anger, and she yelled, Gao Qingyun, have you lost your mind? Gao Qingyun looked at her coldly. Su Qing, feeling guilty, supported herself on the sofa to stand up, but didn't dare approach him again. Her almond-shaped eyes welled up with tears, making her look pitifully fragile. If you don't want us anymore, just say so. I know I'm not as educated or as refined as your wife. Even though I'm carrying your child, she's still the one you love the most. If you want to go back to her, just go. I won't bother you. I'll quietly leave and raise the child on my own. You're the love of my life. I won't cause you any trouble, but please don't hit me. I still have our child in my belly. She ended up sobbing uncontrollably, sneaking glances at Gao Qingyun through her tears. But he remained expressionless, unmoved, so she stopped crying. Go to the hospital and get rid of the baby. Are you crazy? This is your own son. Su Qing was utterly shocked. She knew how much Gao Qingyun had longed for this child, so why was he suddenly asking her to abort it? Gao Qingyun sneered, Are you sure the child is mine? Su Qing's face flushed bright red. What do you mean by that, Gao Qingyun? If it's not yours, whose could it be? Do you have any conscience at all? I'm telling you, I don't want this child. Whether you get rid of it or keep it, it has nothing to do with me. From now on, I won't give you another cent. You're not even human. Su Qing screamed hysterically. Gao Chengyun just looked at her coldly, his gaze full of hatred. Aren't you afraid I'll tell your wife? If you dare abandon me, I'll go to your house and cause a scene. Su Qing's face turned vicious. She was never a good person, and being with Gao Chengyun was only about money. If he was willing to divorce and marry her, that would be ideal. If not, she'd settle for him giving her a sum of money to keep the child. All she wanted was money. Go ahead. My wife won't believe you. Of course, she wouldn't believe it. He was infertile, so how could she think that the child in this woman's belly was his? Su Qing was stunned by his shamelessness and gritted her teeth. You're not human. Gao Chengyun slammed the door as he left. He would never return to that place again. Gao Chengyun deeply regretted it. What did a child matter? Xin Yuan was the one who would be with him for a lifetime. How could he have been so foolish as to seek another woman to bear his child? Xin Yuan was so wonderful. Even though the problem was his, she bore the blame to protect his pride. Where else in the world could there be another woman like her? In the past few days, he had been treating Xin Yuan even better, almost completely submitting to her will. He took over all the household chores, stopped playing games, and completely turned over a new leaf. Xin Yuan continued to laugh and joke with him as usual, but there was now a hint of coldness in her eyes. One day, Xin Yuan arranged to get her hair done with a friend. Just as she reached the entrance of their neighborhood, a woman with long curly hair blocked her path. This woman had a large belly, her face looked haggard, but her lips were painted bright red, making her look somewhat eerie. Xin Yuan, of course, recognized her. Mrs. Gao. And you are? Su Qing got straight to the point. I'm pregnant with your husband's child. I know you can't conceive. If you give me some money, I'm willing to give you the child. After I give birth, I'll disappear and never show up in front of you and your husband again. Xin Yuan suddenly laughed. She was elegant, but at this moment, she laughed so hard that tears came out as if she had just heard a joke. After finally stopping, she looked Su Qing up and down. Miss, are you mistaken? My husband, he's infertile, haha, this is too funny. Before trying to extort someone, shouldn't you at least do some homework? Su Qing's face turned pale in an instant. She finally understood why Gao Chengyun was so angry that day and why he told her to get rid of the baby. After she got together with Gao Chengyun, she hadn't completely severed ties with her previous boyfriend, but the child in her belly was indeed Gao Chengyun's. But how could this be? How? The woman in front of her was still laughing, with a mocking and disdainful expression. A woman's intuition is usually spot on. Su Qing staggered back. It was you. You did something to make Chengyun believe he's infertile. Xin Yuan gently replied, How could it be me? He went to the hospital himself. It had nothing to do with me. You knew he was cheating on you all along. I'm going to tell him. Do you think he'll believe you, or the hospital's diagnosis? Su Qing glared at her. I'll give birth and do a paternity test. Then we'll see. Xin Yuan remained calm and took a step closer, her expression darkening as she looked at Su Qing. Do you really think I'll let you give birth? She was still smiling, but there wasn't a trace of warmth in her eyes, only a deep hatred and overwhelming anger. Su Qing was terrified. She instinctively protected her belly, but Xin Yuan had already walked away, still smiling. Honey, today a ridiculous woman came to see me, with a big belly, claiming she was pregnant with your child and asking me for money. I almost died laughing. If I didn't know about your condition, I might have actually given her the money. Xin Yuan said this casually while removing her makeup. Gao Chengyun, who was drinking water, trembled, spilling some from his cup. Luckily, Xin Yuan was focused on the mirror and didn't notice his reaction. Gao Chengyun forced a smile. He didn't expect Su Qing would actually dare to approach Xin Yuan. He said, Scammers are getting more creative these days. Just ignore her. That woman even threatened to cause trouble at your office. Although I know she's a fraud, it's still not good if she makes a scene at your workplace. I wonder where this woman came from and why she's targeting our family. A flash of ruthlessness appeared in Gao Qingyun's eyes. This woman was really pushing her luck. The next day, he arranged to meet Su Qing at a cafe. Su Qing, foolishly thinking Gao Qingyun was afraid and wanted to reconcile, happily dressed up for the occasion. When she arrived, Gao Qingyun had already ordered her favorite milk tea, speaking softly and apologetically to coax her into drinking it. With his apologies and promises, she was overjoyed. He spent the whole day with her and even stayed the night at her place. However, in the middle of the night, Su Qing was awakened by sharp pains in her stomach. She felt a wetness below, and when she touched it, her hand came away covered in blood. She was terrified and called out Gao Qingyun's name. When the lights came on, she saw Gao Qingyun standing by the bed, looking at her coldly, his eyes as sharp as a snake's. In an instant, she understood everything. You put something in the milk tea. Realizing it now is too late. Gao Qingyun, you're not human. The baby in my belly is yours. It really is yours. Su Qing screamed, cold sweat breaking out on her forehead from the pain. She felt something slipping away from her body, something she couldn't hold onto no matter what. Take me to the hospital, Gao Qingyun. She tried to get out of bed, but the severe jolt made the pain in her belly even worse. She felt like she was going to die. Crying, she begged the indifferent man in front of her. This is your own child. Your wife lied to you. She knew you were cheating all along. Please take me to the hospital. A moment of hesitation flashed across Gao Qingyun's face, but soon the image of the diagnosis appeared in his mind. No, this woman was lying. The doctor wouldn't deceive him. The baby really is yours. Take me to the hospital and let me give birth. Then we can do a paternity test. If it's not yours, I'll leave immediately with the child. Please. I don't want to die, and neither does my baby. Maybe it was the deep sorrow in her eyes, or perhaps Gao Qingyun was beginning to doubt. In the end, he took Su Qing to the hospital. But it was too late. The baby was lost. It was a boy. Although Su Qing's life was saved, she was severely weakened and would never be able to conceive again. A few days later, the paternity test results came back. When Gao Qingyun saw the report, it felt like a bolt of lightning struck him, nearly knocking the breath out of him. The child was his. He had killed his own son with his own hands. A taste of blood rose in his throat, and as if his heart was being pierced by countless arrows, he finally spat out a mouthful of blood. Gao Qingyun didn't know how he made it home. When he opened the door, he saw Xin Yuan sitting on the sofa, looking at him with disdain. A divorce agreement lay on the coffee table. Everything was your plan. You knew I was cheating all along. You made me kill my own son with my own hands. Xin Yuan, you venomous woman. Gao Qingyun screamed hysterically, almost wanting to rush over and strangle her. Xin Yuan smiled gently, even with a hint of surprise. What are you talking about? I don't know anything. Oh dear, so you were cheating on me? No wonder you've been spending so much money recently. You want a divorce? Don't even think about it. My son is gone, and I won't let you off easily. You couldn't have children yourself, and you wouldn't let another woman bear one for me. You're utterly shameless. I'm telling you, I'm going to drag this out. I'll keep finding other women to bear children for me, and you'll just have to watch and suffer. Xin Yuan looked at him with pity, as if he were a joke. Her crimson lips parted as she said, Do you think you can still father a child? What do you mean? Do you think I tampered with the diagnosis? Ha ha ha, you're too naive. Why would I do something superficial like that when I could eliminate the problem for good? After finding out you were cheating, I started adding large amounts of crude cottonseed oil to your food every day. Do you know what cottonseed oil does? Long-term consumption causes irreversible damage to a man's reproductive system. Didn't you notice? I'll kill you. Gao Qingyun, driven mad with rage, lunged forward and grabbed Xin Yuan by the throat. At that moment, the door was slammed open with a bang, and Xin Yuan's parents arrived with 2 police officers. They quickly pulled Gao Qingyun away, the officers restraining him as he struggled violently, his eyes bloodshot with fury. Xin Yuan collapsed into her mother's arms, sobbing, He's been cheating on me. I've already agreed to the divorce. but he still wants to kill me. Shun's mother held her, comforting her. Don't be afraid, sweetheart. We're here for you. Gao Qingyan was taken away by the police. Although it was an attempted murder, it was still considered a domestic issue. Besides, Gao Qingyan kept insisting he acted out of temporary insanity and showed sincere remorse. It now depended on whether Xin Yuan would forgive him. The police arranged for them to have a private conversation. Xin Yuan's neck still bore bruises, which she covered with a light blue scarf. She smiled faintly. Gao Qingyan, if you agree to leave the marriage with nothing, I won't press charges. Gao Qingyan sneered. Do you think I don't know the law? Attempted murder doesn't carry a long sentence, and besides, we're still married. What's the point of sending you to prison? Xin Yuan gently caressed her pale fingers, a smirk on her lips. I have proof of your infidelity. Even if we go to court for a divorce, you won't win against me. If I spread this information, what do you think your company's leadership would do? I know they're considering promoting you to department manager. If they find out about this, do you think you'll still get that promotion? Don't try to scare me. A few photos from a private detective aren't enough to be considered evidence. What if they came from Su Qing? Let me think, there are intimate photos of you too, and even an inappropriate video. Did you really think she didn't secretly record your good times? Oh, and she also gave me the paternity test report. That's impossible. Su Qing wouldn't do that. Xin Yuan laughed heartily. Gao Qingyan, you really don't understand women. The person who hates you most now isn't me, it's Su Qing. You killed your own child with your own hands and made her infertile for life. Do you really think she'd forgive you? Of course, I gave her a large sum of money to get her to hand over the evidence. Gao Qingyan stared at Xin Yuan in disbelief, unable to fathom that the woman in front of him was the wife he had shared a bed with for years. She was meticulous, calculating every move. She was terrifying. Seeing the cold glint in her eyes, he couldn't help but feel a twinge of fear. Xin Yuan stood up. Take your time to think it over, but I think you'll agree. She was right. Gao Qingyan agreed, because he had no other choice. 2 years later, he happened to run into Xin Yuan at a mall. She had remarried and was accompanied by a pair of beautiful twins, a boy and a girl, who looked just like her. He was shocked. Wasn't Xin Yuan infertile? Xin Yuan, seeing his astonishment, smiled gently. These children were born through IVF after I underwent treatment. My husband is a traditional Chinese medicine doctor specializing in gynecology. Look, aren't the children adorable? As she said this, her husband approached. The way he looked at her reminded Gao Qingyan of how he used to look at her. These 2 years hadn't been good for him. Leaving the marriage with nothing had put enormous financial strain on him, and although he was promoted to department manager, the work stress only increased. Under the dual pressures, his health had deteriorated, and he was diagnosed with stomach cancer. This was the price of his infidelity: losing his child, his lover, his wife, and his health.